Thank you guys for being here. It's been a minute since we've had a neighborhood networking, so I'm really glad to see so many faces on the call this morning. We are excited to have Unbound with us co-hosting. Tara Hefner is here, and we're going to hear a little bit about what they're up to, what they've got going on, how they've been working through COVID. Brandon, I'm going to kick it over to you if you want to go over just kind of the rules and regulations of how this is going to play out, and then we'll get going.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So many rules to remember today, so start writing them down. I'm just going to kind of highlight what we're doing today. I know a lot of you have been on these calls before, but we're going to get to know Tara a little bit this morning for roughly the first half. The second half, we'll jump into some networking, and we'll go into those breakout rooms. So we'll kind of prompt you with questions as you go in there, and then you'll have about 9 minutes to network with everybody, but make sure to introduce yourself once you do get into those breakout rooms. And yeah, I think that's about it. It's a fun, easy morning, good way to start a Friday. But with that, maybe we'll just jump right in. Tara, the floor is yours if you want to give us a little background about yourself, and then we can start jumping into more questions.
Absolutely. I'm so pleased to be with you guys today and share about Unbound and apparently about myself. So first off, I have been with Unbound for just over a year. I joined Unbound after being in corporate America or for-profit organizations for my entire career, and made the decision to switch last year. Unbound is an international development organization. We work with individuals living in poverty around the world. We operate in 19 countries. I have been honored to be able to visit 3 of those in the first year of my employment. And we are here on Southwest Boulevard, just behind the Quick Trip. And now that you know the name Unbound, I guarantee all of you are like, oh yeah, I've totally seen your building. I've seen your billboard. We've been around for about 40 years. We'll be celebrating 40 years next year. And we're excited to be here. I think that's probably the gist of Unbound. There's a lot more, but also the gist of me until we get into the questions that Brandon's got queued up.
Awesome. And I've always seen the logo on the top of your building as I'm going to the Quick Trip off of Southwest Boulevard there. So as soon as I met you and I knew a little more, I was like, oh, I recognize that. I think a lot of people do. Tara, you mentioned that you made that shift from corporate, America to the nonprofit. Can you tell us a little bit behind the decision you made there, why you did that?
Yeah, it was an interesting one, and one that I probably, when somebody asks you where do you see yourself in 5 years, I would have never said working for an international nonprofit. I was managing communications, internal and external communications for a publicly traded global company headquartered here in Kansas City, and had really started networking and looking for my next step and trying to determine what that might be, and got introduced to my now boss. And I was sharing with Brandon and Katie before we started here that probably after 20 minutes of talking with him, that initial coffee, I realized I would follow this man into fire. He's an excellent leader. And more importantly, the mission of Unbound was more than I could have ever imagined being able to work with. I really wanted to make an impact and leave the world a little bit better than I found it. And what attracted me to Unbound was kind of our core belief, which is that we believe the best path out of poverty is a self-directed one. And that what that means is that we're not going to go into a community and tell them what we think they need. We're not going to build wells. We're not going to give them things. They tell us what they need, and we give them the resources to make that happen. The other awesome thing about Unbound, and what made me want to come and work for them is our operations. So our staff in country, so again, we operate in 19 countries around the world. Those are all local people. So we're not bringing in, we're not sending expats over and having them operate the programs. It is operated from individuals who are familiar with the communities and familiar with the neighborhoods and the individuals in those neighborhoods. And interestingly, about 50% of our staff actually have been sponsored or were scholars in our program. So they really know the program inside and out. I was managing community engagement in my last role as well. And so this just seemed like the perfect marriage of two worlds, helping the families we serve, but then also helping companies make an impact and engage their employees. So it's been a phenomenal first year.
That's awesome. What countries did you get to visit?
So I went to Kenya, Uganda, and Colombia.
Oh, wow. How long were you there?
I'm sorry?
How long were you there?
So Africa was actually what I would consider a pretty quick trip for the journey that it took to get there. We were only on the ground for 8 days, I think. And it was, I'll also warn you guys, I am an emotional person in general. And so I will probably say something that might make me tear up a little, because both of those trips were absolutely life-changing. I saw things and met individuals that I will never forget. It was just an amazing, both were just an amazing experience. And it's interesting that I was able to go so early in my tenure here. We always do a discovery trip, a staff development trip, but unfortunately that staff development trip was canceled because of where it was scheduled to go and just turmoil in that particular country. But very quickly, there was another opportunity, and I had just returned from a vacation with my husband. We went to Germany last year for Oktoberfest, and my boss came in and he said, "Hey, do you have any plans in November?" And I was like, that's kind of a big month. There's, Thanksgiving and some other things happening. He's like, "Well, you have the opportunity to visit Africa. I was wondering if you'd be interested." And I was like, "You started the wrong way, buddy. You should have started, do you want to go to Africa?" Because I would cancel anything for that opportunity. And so I was really lucky to be able to go.
That's fantastic. That sounds great. And since you love traveling, what a perfect match.
Exactly.
Shifting gears just a little bit from discussing your travel, but you mentioned a moment ago that the participants in your program are scholars and graduates of the program. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and the program that they're a part of?
Sure. So we are a sponsorship organization, and we are really focused on one-to-one relationships. So an individual will sponsor a child or youth, and even elders. We are the only US organization that has elder sponsorships. And that sponsorship, again, as we deliver on our promise that and our belief that the best path out of poverty is a self-directed one, those funds go directly to that family, and they determine how they use those funds. So it's, if they need to pay for a new roof, if they need to pay for food for that month, they determine how it is spent. I heard an analogy from during a webinar that our director of international programs gave. And he said, imagine standing in line at a food bank and you're given what the food bank has available, but more importantly, what the food bank thinks you need. Now imagine, given the money to be able to go and buy the food and the resources that you need. And that's really what we're all about. We're all about empowering them to do what is necessary. So that sponsorship, it starts as young as, I think, 2 years old and goes up until the time that they graduate from high school. And then at that point, many of our sponsored friends will then apply for a scholarship. Some of them actually do have to apply for a scholarship as a sponsored friend as well, depending on their situation. But then that sponsorship, or that scholarship, excuse me, pays for books, it pays for transportation, it pays for whatever resources they need for their education to be successful. So there's, a couple of programs that we have that really are focused on making sure that the sponsored friend, that child or youth, and their family has what they need to lift themselves out of poverty.
Awesome work that you guys are doing. Thanks for sharing that. And the trips, I mean, they sound impactful. My good friend Chandler works, as you know, he works there. And I don't remember where he's been, but he showed me pictures of it. And the families, the kids that they interact with, they're just bright smiles on their faces, loved the interactions there.
It's really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit. So, with COVID, everything going on, we like to kind of look at, the positive side of things, I guess, and maybe it's kind of forced us to get a little creative as well. So what do you think, and what do you see as maybe some positive changes or just changes in general with Unbound and with the nonprofit?
Absolutely. So it's so interesting, kind of that change, those adjustments that we've had to make as we all went home. We went home very quickly and said, okay, we'll figure it out once we get home. And we were able to make use of technology in a way that we hadn't before, both internally here in Kansas City and then externally with our sponsors and sponsored friends and in country. So I've really seen an amazing acceptance in innovation and accelerated innovation. So our paper processes, that sponsorship, really, it's a relationship, and it's all driven on letters back and forth from the sponsored friend to the sponsor. And that was always a paper process. And we've now converted that to an online experience, which has eased the work that we have to do here in our office, but then also eased the work for our staff in the field. We now, we have social workers in the field who visit our families and work with them on budgeting and developing plans and goals for their future. Those are now more virtual to protect everybody. So they're using programs like WhatsApp, video chats, and really able to stay connected with the family that way. It's disrupted our ability to reach and connect with new supporters. And so we are getting creative as well as how we do that. And so one of the ways is webinars. That's something we've never done before. We have amazing stories, amazing content, and amazing presenters. And so we are able to kind of package that and develop some webinars. We had one in May, I think, and we'll have another one actually next week that everybody here is welcome to join. But during that webinar, we're going to be exploring how poverty has changed over the years and really how seeing potential in new leaders will help us forge a path out of poverty. So really looking at our sponsored families as the leaders in forging that path. The whole COVID experience has really I think helped a lot of people realize that the world is no longer just your neighborhood. And there are opportunities through Unbound and other organizations to make an impact, not just here in Kansas City, but across the globe.
That's fantastic. How does someone become a sponsor and get involved with your organization if they're wanting to help and support your mission and make a difference?
Absolutely, great question. Love the question, of course. So there's a number of opportunities if a company wants to get involved. So my role is to bring Unbound into the workplace and engage companies in supporting Unbound and providing the resources to their employees to support Unbound. So our team will work with those companies to develop a partnership that really aligns with their goals and missions in a unique and impactful way. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all program for companies. We want to make sure that it is a mutually beneficial relationship and that it meets your goals and objectives. Personally, you can sponsor through our website. We have 40,000 kids who are currently on the waiting list, and they certainly need, our help more than ever. We also have a disaster relief fund that is specifically focused on the impact of COVID. We've sent almost $1.5 million this year, and we're looking at sending at least another $1 million in November, and we're hoping that that increases after Giving Tuesday. And then there's also the sponsorship and education fund. Right now, just like here in the States, we have seen a very severe digital divide when it comes to children having school at home. And we want to make sure that these students can continue advancing because, education is a key component in getting out of poverty. And so we want to make sure they have those resources available. So those are some of the ways that you can support Unbound.
Thanks for sharing. And I know our members always like to hear, and us as well, we like to hear how we can, get involved and help, especially during, right now, it's hard to volunteer anywhere, right? I mean, especially virtually.
Yeah, and so that's the other big bummer about COVID. We have a great opportunity typically to volunteer here in our building. We process, I am not sure how many pieces of mail. I should know that number, but an obscene amount of mail typically when we are sending letters back and forth, and we need help processing that. So that is usually an opportunity for volunteering. We are exploring other kind of virtual ways to volunteer and to give back and support because we know financial commitment is not always an opportunity. And so we know that people are looking for opportunities to give their time. So we're trying to be innovative in that regard too.
And kind of going off of that, so that's kind of the volunteer side. What about the staff side? What have you guys done recently to keep staff engaged, working from home, working remotely? It's a difficult thing. What have you guys been doing?
That's also interesting. We have an amazing staff here. We have about 180 employees here in Kansas City. And we have a great chef who works downstairs, and she feeds us every day. They are not extravagant meals by any stretch of the imagination, but amazing tostadas, great beans and rice, and more importantly, great camaraderie to when we eat together as a community. But we have been, so my immediate team, we have daily touch base chats. We start our day off together, and it's just like what you would have in the hallways, over coffee, talking about your day, talking about, what you've watched, what your plans are for the weekend. So we have that touch base every day. And then weekly, our Kansas City community gets together, and that's actually been an amazing opportunity to also patch in our staff from the field, where we probably didn't do that as frequently because we were all in one room together and we just thought about what was in our room. Now we can invite other people. And so we've heard from staff from Peru, from Uganda, from Colombia, and Guatemala. So we've been able to hear from our staff and really understand kind of what their challenges are and what they're facing. And then we have a stand-up meeting with our department following, which is purely, well, I guess there is a little business, but it's really just a lot of fun and catching up together. Overall, like, it is very challenging to not be together. Our culture is all about relationships. And so maintaining those relationships remotely is certainly challenging, but it's also uplifting to know that there are 180 of us here in Kansas City trying to change the world, from our kitchen tables, our couch, wherever we have to work. And we've got friends and coworkers around the globe who are doing the same thing.
That's fantastic. It is super challenging right now. I know that the chamber, we've really had to shift a lot. We focus on bringing people together and developing connections and meeting with people one-on-one. So we totally feel you for that. But proud of the work that you guys are doing and how you've been able to pivot and shift. And just going back for a second, if you have a tostada recipe that you want to share with anybody, that would be welcome. Yeah. Brandon might like it to go with his breakfast burritos this morning.
That's true. That I would have to tap into Maria for that. We did a survey a couple of months ago to understand what our employees' challenges are and kind of what they're missing from, we call Unbound by the address here. So 1 Elmwood. So we said, what are you missing from 1 Elmwood? What are your challenges? What are you liking from working from home? And Maria, who is our cook, she was mentioned by name more often than anybody else. Everybody misses Maria's cooking. So, and I am included in that. It's not the same to have to cook for yourself and eat lunch by yourself too. So.
Yeah. Well, when you guys get back in the office and we get back to normal, if you want to invite everybody in to eat with Maria, I know that I would absolutely love that to happen.
Everybody is welcome to join. Our kitchen is always open. The other thing that was a big bummer, we have, so we're in an old warehouse, and the founders bought the warehouse, I think back in the 90s. And essentially, as we have grown, they've developed, portions of the warehouse and just gone further and further, and made it, into workable office space. Well, we had this space downstairs that was pretty raw. And we know that not everybody has the opportunity to travel and visit our communities and learn about the cultures and learn about what we do in country. And so we've developed an exhibit space, and we were hoping to launch that exhibit space in May, and we would have been hosting this neighborhood networking event there. But once it's open, we will host another neighborhood networking event, but it's also a space available to any business that wants to use it for meetings. We have a meeting room and then an open space. And it's just an amazing area for you to learn our history and see almost, real size, maybe a little bit bigger, the families and the individuals that we are supporting. It's just, I wish I could invite you all over here right now, but eventually you are all welcome, and then you can join us for lunch, and maybe you'll be lucky that it'll be tostada day.
That would be wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tara. It has been so great getting to hear from you and hear what Unbound is doing. If anyone in the group has any questions for Tara, feel free to raise your hand or drop something in the chat. We can take a few questions before we get into the breakout rooms to do some networking. And Tara, if you want to even put in the chat the webinar that you guys are going to have coming up, we'd be glad to share that information and get that out. And I know I would personally be interested in seeing what it is and what you guys are up to. So
absolutely, I will pull that up and get that posted. I should have had that ready.
That's all right. Well, while we're waiting to see if any questions do come in, I wanted to just give a shout out. We've got a few additional chamber staff on the call with us this morning. Vicki Kulikoff is on. She is our Director of Small Business. She's got a lot happening right now as we work into the small business celebration, which that lunch is going to be coming up in next week. If you haven't signed up for it, I highly encourage it. We will be announcing the Mr. K Award winner and various other small business awards. Vicki's been working really hard to engage our members and our community. So if you have any questions about that, Vicki is happy to help and take those questions from you. Shannon Spees is with us. Most of you probably know Shannon. She's been with us for a while, and she's probably who talked to you whenever you decided to join the chamber. So she's with us, and I don't think I see anybody else on, but Brandon, of course, went away, but you know, he's shy, I guess. So, but it's always nice to have our staff team here with us. But we did have a question come in from Maddie. Tara, what is the most surprising lessons that you've learned in the past month?
Oh, you know, I think for me, I've learned, and this might be where I get a little teary-eyed. So I've heard amazing stories about the power of community. So moms checking in on neighbors and elders and communities coming together to support one another. And for me, I take from that, you know, the realization that we get so busy and so consumed with our own lives, and it can be very isolating. So that power of community has been a real lesson to me. The dedication of the students who are using cell phones to be able to continue their studies. You know, families of 4 to 8 people are sharing a cell phone to try to complete their schoolwork. And the moms and dads are doing whatever they can to make sure that they are completing their schoolwork and also have their needs. And the human potential is just amazing. Our sponsored families are a wealth of innovation and drive. In my travels, I met I met many amazing women, but 2 in particular who I think of almost daily. Jacqueline, who lived in Colombia, and she works in the informal sector, informal economy, which means that she sells things on the streets. And her husband has diabetes and unfortunately is bedridden. And I worry about how she's able to sell things when everybody was, I think now they're starting to come out, but you know, they were all forced to stay home. So she had nobody to sell her items to. I think a lot about Florence, who I met in Kenya. And she lived in Nairobi. She lives in Kibera, which is one of Africa's largest slums. And she was born without, she was born and suffered in a fire and has very few digits. She has only her thumb. And she makes jewelry. She makes beads. I'm wearing one of her bracelets here. And she makes these beads with a thumb and using her mouth to thread those beads. And she sells this jewelry, and just her outlook on life and her innovation, like I said, life-changing. And I think about all these amazing families that are still surviving and probably thriving because of the resources they get from Unbound. And so for that, I am so grateful. And while I'm worried about them, I shouldn't be that worried. I know that they're being taken care of. But so for me, I've learned, I've learned from the families, the power of community, the dedication, and really the human potential.
That is great. Thank you so much. That was a great question, Maddie. And I love your answer, Tara. And especially in times like these where we are inundated with bad news and, for you to bring a breath of fresh air and show us that, there is still a wonderful good side of humans and humanity. That is just a great way for us to end a week and to start a weekend. And it's really encouraging. So thank you so much for talking about Unbound with us this morning and sharing your story. It has been just really great to hear, and we look forward to working with you in the future. However we can help, sponsor, show up for lunch, be at your exhibit, whatever, just let us know as things continue to unfold with Unbound, and we are here to help and support as best as we possibly can.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce Unbound to everybody. And I will answer some of the questions that are in the chat. And I hope to one day open the doors to all of you and your friends and whoever else you want to drag along with you. It's really an amazing place to be.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully soon we can do that. So we are going to get into some networking now. Brandon is going to square up some breakout rooms. You guys know how this works. He's going to prompt you with a question. Before we do that, I want to make sure that I give a great shout out to our sponsors. As always, without our sponsors, we would not be able to have events like this. And so Delta Dental, SS&C, T-Mobile, thank you so much for your partnerships. Thank you all for your memberships and your partnerships with the Chamber. We couldn't do any of the work that we're doing within the community without your all's memberships and your all support. So thank you so much for that. Brandon, tee us up with a question, get us started with some conversation, and let's hit up some breakout rooms.
Yeah, and sorry guys, I'm at my sister's house. I'm here to receive a couch, and they came during the middle of everything. Dogs are barking. Anyway, I'm back. We're good.
Brandon
Tara,
is a
thanks again.
world-class multitasker.
It was stressful, but I do want to say thanks to Tara one more time. Appreciate having you here. We're going to go into some breakout rooms. We'll have about 4 to 5 people in each room. The question that I wanted to prompt everybody with is, what are some of the challenges that you or your organization is facing right now? Maybe someone in that group can help solve it for you. So I'm going to send you guys off. We should have about 8 minutes in the room, and then we'll come back for some more networking. So one sec while I send you away.